Living with my girlfriend for 4 years feels like raising a child. I should clean this up, she says, but it's still a mess. As I push her to appointments, her response is always, I don't want to go, I'm exhausted. Is this love or just a draining dependency? Firstly, I apologize. This might end up being an incoherent rant, as my feelings are still quite raw. I have lived with my girlfriend for almost 4 years now. She does not work. She has issues such as borderline personality disorder, depression, and social anxiety, which make maintaining a steady job quite challenging. In theory, the arrangement is that instead she takes care of the house, including cleaning, food preparation, and other responsibilities, while I go to work to provide all the financial support. In practice, she has not properly cleaned the apartment for years, and cooking occurs about 30% of the time on average, leaving many of the other responsibilities to me. She is always very eager to say things like, I should clean this up. And I do believe that on some level she wants to, but 3 years later, there is still just a pile of unorganized trash and junk. Or perhaps she makes happy promises like, I can make you lunch for work every day, which is about 20% successful in reality. Sure, I could pressure her and remind her about these things or keep demanding them daily, but it is something I dislike doing, especially because whenever I try to gently discuss such matters, it tends to sour her mood for the rest of the day if she does not outright explode. So in either case, it is just not something I want to deal with. We live in Japan and neither of us is a native speaker. However, I am more fluent, so I often take time off from work to accompany her to dentist visits, doctor's appointments, immigration appointments, or essentially anything else. This is not solely due to the language barriers but also because of her social anxiety, and I genuinely want to help her. I also end up taking care of all the paperwork, bills, and other necessary tasks. I do not mind taking care of her if she actually fulfilled her promises. In a way, it is not the end of the world to take care of her, even if sometimes the dependency feels somewhat unhealthy, but I already struggle with my own motivation issues to the extent that I can barely take care of myself. The worst part is when she acts like a bratty child, which makes it incredibly more energy-consuming. It seems she does not want to be taken care of, yet I find I have to expend triple the effort to manage everything. For instance, a few days ago, at her request, I took her to a nearby dermatologist. I wanted to arrive as soon as they opened because I wanted to get to work on time. I was unsure how long it might take, but I knew there was a risk of cutting it close. I woke her up 20 minutes before we were supposed to be there, and her first words were sharply uttered, "Why are you waking me up 20 minutes before we need to be somewhere that takes 3 minutes to walk to?" In the end, she was 7 minutes late. She never apologized for either of those situations, and she becomes upset if I try to hurry her along. I also must drag her to the dentist. I do not believe I need to be there, but I do not think she would go by herself. The reason I push her to go is that she neglects her dental hygiene. She literally had to have one decayed tooth extracted because she refuses to brush her teeth at all. She keeps claiming that she simply forgets, but I have reminded her countless times, and practically every day I say, okay, I am going to go brush my teeth. However, today presented the most recent tipping point. We were heading to a psychiatrist. We go to the same location at the same time, so it was not just me taking time out to care for her. I am attending for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder while she is attending for depression, anxiety, and other issues. This morning, she experienced nausea and did not sleep well. Numerous times, I essentially have to fight with her to get her to attend any appointment. Instead of discussing the details of the previous days when we agree on appointments, and I usually remind her multiple times, the confrontation always occurs 5 minutes before we are supposed to leave the house when both of us are groggy and under time pressure. I do not think this is very important. I really do not want to go. I am not feeling very well. As a result, even if it is a critical doctor's appointment, I must push her so hard that it turns into a conflict. Usually, I have to concede and later apologize to the doctors and arrange a new appointment. Even when I manage to get her to go, we have been late so many times because of this. So fine, she was feeling unwell, that happens. But with her, it occurs frequently for various reasons. In particular, with the psychiatrist, they know us, so I have handled everything for her before. I went by myself, explained everything to the doctor, provided some minor falsehoods about why she could not attend, and he simply continued the medication, and I obtained the prescription. This time, though, the doctor wanted to reduce the medication but did not want to proceed without her consent. I attempted calling her multiple times, but she did not answer. This has been a point of frustration for me for some time because so often when I attempt to contact her, I simply cannot reach her. It is incredibly annoying. Many situations arise where I am unsure of her whereabouts and I worry about her, yet she will not answer her phone or messages for hours. For example, just recently, I was visiting a distant supermarket on my way home from work, which should be her responsibility, but I was trying to be nice and make her life easier, and attempted to call her to find out what we had in the fridge so that I would not buy unnecessary extra items. Again, there was no answer. This is a recurring pattern. 80% of the time I call her, I cannot reach her, even in an emergency, despite calling her on the phone or through various platforms multiple times. As a side note, I often find it easier to take care of some of her responsibilities because if I attempt to gently encourage her to handle them, she reacts very poorly and becomes impossible to converse with. Now it would be somewhat understandable if it were simply an honest mistake, such as her being in the bathroom and unable to hear the phone ring, but it continually happens. So after my supermarket experience, I wanted to definitively determine why it was challenging to reach her. It seems she has her ringtones completely turned off without vibration. I spoke with her and asked if it would be acceptable to adjust the phone settings so that at least my ringtone would come through. I have mentioned many times that I really want to be able to contact her in case of immediate concerns and asked her to address the issue, but she simply dismissed it. Thus, I only call her when I genuinely need to gain her immediate attention, which is not frequent. She does the same to me much more often when I am at work. For example, yesterday she called me to inquire about a random math question. So I set up a custom ringtone just for me. However, later she was displeased because I was messing with her phone even though I sought her permission, and we engaged in a bit of an argument. Initially, she claimed I was shouting at her and just grabbed her phone without permission, but she later retracted those accusations, only to bring them back later. There have been many occasions where her side of the story is not only extreme but also internally inconsistent. Fast forward to the discussion regarding the calls about the doctor's appointment. After explaining the situation, I messaged her to provide the explanation for my calls and asked, "Didn't we set up the ringtone for you or did you not wake up to it?" She simply replied, "I don't know." It turns out that after the last time I set up the custom ringtone, she silently turned it back off and then lied about it. When I addressed it with her face-to-face, her defense was, "You do not take no for an answer, so I merely agreed with you and later turned it off." I believe I would accept a no as an answer, but first, I would prefer to discuss it, especially since her sole reason for not wanting to have a ringtone on, at least for me, is that she does not want her phone to make noises. As a side note, she has an alarm that goes off every day that she consistently forgets about. It merely reminds her of one specific task on Wednesdays. But when I brought that up, her defense was, "Okay, I will turn off the alarm. Problem solved." When I pointed out that this did not make sense if she has been alright with the phone producing surprise noises daily, yet I call her maybe once every 2 months, her response was literally, "Oh yeah, because it does not make sense to you, I am obligated to agree with everything you say. I am not required to answer you," followed by, "Oh, little prince just wants others to do everything he tells them to." This is a person who frequently discusses how if I do something she perceives as negative, my true intentions do not matter, only how she feels about it. There is some minor truth to this to an extent, but we are discussing matters where I genuinely have the best intentions, and I am fairly certain that 99% of people would find it acceptable. The issue is that this perspective only seems to apply in one direction. When I accidentally do something unfavorable, she demands an apology. No, merely saying sorry is not sufficient. And when I remind her of this viewpoint and express that I am troubled by something she does, either I deserved it or her explanations become contradictory, nonsensical, or are reduced to, "Well, I don't want to, you cannot force me." I am not perfect, but I do genuinely try to discuss issues calmly and find mutually agreeable solutions that go beyond simply declaring, "I don't want to." For the sake of brevity, I am omitting all the positive aspects of our relationship and only presenting my perspective. Her childlike side, for instance, includes an endearing approach to things filled with wonder and excitement, and her strong emotions can bring both ups and downs. Of course, without delving too deeply into specifics, there is a danger that I am just pretending to be a saint, but I can answer questions in greater depth and explain the areas in which I believe I acted incorrectly. Even if these are small issues by themselves, it feels like they are accumulating, and I attempted to provide more background on why I feel this way. There is certainly much more, of course. I apologize if this has turned out to be quite lengthy. Honestly, I do not have high hopes for anyone to respond. We have also tried couples therapy, and she has been attending both a psychiatrist and a therapist. Even though many of the initial issues have diminished, it feels as if the underlying problems remain largely unchanged. There has not been substantial improvement for a couple of years now. We have had numerous serious discussions and near breakups, and following those conversations, she typically starts behaving very positively for a while. She might even concede that she was wrong in everything and ask for forgiveness, only to revert to old habits a few weeks or months later and complain that I always force her to apologize and agree with me. I simply do not want to continue this repetitive cycle, but I am unsure what else I can do to salvage our relationship. I am also concerned that if I just bring this up with her, it will be the fifth or sixth similar serious discussion, where I have constantly granted her the benefit of the doubt and chosen to give her another chance, hoping for improvement. At this point, I am honestly contemplating giving up on her. Due to my own issues, as I mentioned, I feel like I can barely take care of myself, making it challenging to support someone who does not take any of the very few responsibilities seriously, cannot manage her own self-care, and turns caring for her into a nightmare. She is supposed to be taking care of me and managing the household as well, but she ends up being a massive energy drain, and it may simply be too much for me to handle right now. Story 2. My life began in trauma and spiraled deeper as I battled my father's neglect and abuse at the hands of a twisted caregiver. You don't forget what you felt, I learned too soon after years of silent suffering. Now at 20, burdened yet determined to protect my siblings, I cling to hope even in darkness. Will I ever escape this legacy? I am sharing my life story here, spanning 20 years so far. I am a recently turned 20-year-old male. Before you begin reading, I want to share that I have experienced pain. I do not intend to be edgy or cringeworthy, it simply is what it is. Please be aware that this comes with a trigger warning as it contains implications of sexual assault, violence, and suicide. I was born to two teenagers who bonded over trauma, which resulted in me and the four siblings that followed. I initially thought to start from my beginning, but I feel I need to go back a bit further, or rather, I would like to. This will help paint the full picture. On my mother's side, my grandmother was born into a family heavily tied to the Ku Klux Klan. Growing up, the women in her family were used for cleaning, cooking, and sex incest. At least that is what she has told me. My grandmother grew up in that environment and chose to run away at a very young age, managing to escape. She was a child, and in her naivety, she did not know better. While on the run, she was approached by a man who inquired about what she was doing and why she was alone. My grandmother ended up in the same situation until she was 19. It was then that she finally escaped by jumping out of a three-story window, and as a result, she had two sons whom she kept and raised as her own my uncles. Later, she met my grandfather at a strip club and had my mother and aunt. Given everything that happened, my grandmother vowed to herself that it would not happen again in any way. Thus, she became extremely overprotective and did not want her daughters doing anything that would attract attention or incite attraction. One can understand her perspective, given her experiences with men. Every man she had met was the same, leading her to believe that it was not worth giving anyone the benefit of the doubt, as it risked her daughter's safety. This was her mindset, justified albeit controlling. Because of this, my mother rebelled and ran away. On my father's side, my grandmother was a heavy drug user and was with my grandfather, who, from what I hear, was the type involved in pimping and drug dealing. He was hardly ever around, and when he was, it was only to fulfill his own desires. My grandmother ended up having 13 children, including my dad, all of whom are either dead or incarcerated indefinitely due to gang-related violence and drug dealing. Given this, my father did what any other fatherless black child would do in that environment. He was raised by what they call the village. My mom and dad met in a beach shelter, connected, and became inseparable. After causing trouble and spending time together, it did not take long for me to enter the picture. I was born, and 2 years later my sister was born. From that point, things were always rocky. I will break down the rest by year. At around 3 to 4 years old, my father was still involved in gang activities and would be absent for long periods. My mother had to raise my sister and me on her own. I was an easy child, which she viewed as a blessing. My mother worked multiple jobs and taught me, a toddler at the time, to care for my 1-year-old sister. I was taught to change diapers when necessary and make baby food when needed. This continued for several months, closer to a year. After immense stress and exhaustion, my mother opted to put my father on child support. When she did, he retaliated by reporting her for child neglect and took custody of us. From approximately 4.5 to 5.5 years old, my sister and I were in my father's care. We stayed in a hotel and were cared for by one of his female friends, a prostitute he was exploiting. This was not at all an ideal situation in retrospect. I cannot deny that this woman loved my dad in her own twisted way. She would do anything for him. When we were brought there as his children with another woman, we represented what we did not want to be. We suffered for that. I was abused in every way imaginable, physically, mentally, and sexually by her and others. This continued for that year. I remember staring at the wall with my hands raised for hours, being beaten if I moved or needed to use the bathroom, and I was not allowed to go. I remember being hidden under the bed while she worked. I recall a moment when I needed to use the restroom. Crawling out, I attempted to make it there, as wetting myself would mean punishment. I made my way to the restroom and heard my name called, which caused me to freeze. Turning around, I saw 4 men with her. I was beaten, and later on, Eventually, I do not remember how, but at some point we ended up back in my mother's care. The pain remains at the forefront because one does not forget what they have felt, a vivid memory, almost relivable. Back then, I did not understand the extent of what all that meant and what I had experienced, but now, it has messed with my mind in ways I cannot even begin to articulate. I do recall my father profusely apologizing and crying. I heard about how he beat that woman. While I do not believe in forgiveness, I do think it is unfair to blame her. She was another broken soul manipulated into caring to that extent, with jealousy in its purest form twisted into devotion. I acknowledge that she too was simply used, and I feel sorry for her despite the hatred I carry. My mother eventually gained visitation rights, but there were bruises and injuries that could not be explained. This led to another argument between them, as my dad did not know how we got them. My mother dressed us to hide the marks. Fast forward a bit, and we are now in my mother's care. My parents are still on and off and have had 3 more kids, totaling us 5, 2 sisters and 2 brothers. In those early years, amidst the broken home, my mind wandered. I used to be curious about the world, fixating on it intensely until it no longer mattered. My parents introduced us to religion, and I began to think of how everything outside of religious texts, the Bible, the Torah, and so forth, connected to science and the world around us. My grandfather on my mother's side never denied me an answer and fueled my curiosity. I came to view science as merely an attempt to understand a set of instilled instructions. A little ways into grade school, I became more interested in people and how they functioned. However, one thing stood out to me in school: the underlying lust and interest surrounding it. Having been exposed to that, I could see the looks, the body gestures, the buildup. Even among my peers, other kids would discuss such things in small circles. It was then that I sought to understand lust and began recalling what had happened to me. I started to ask questions. Why do people act that way? Why is it everywhere? Why is it worthy of this deep fixation? I gradually wormed my way into various groups: active kids. I remember starting with a kiss. I could see the building anticipation in their eyes connected to that first kiss, and as the kiss grew deeper, their eagerness increased. I could sense it, and it felt incredibly wrong. I never chose to go further and backed out completely. I did not like it, but I never stopped observing people, the dynamics of how they interacted, the desires they fixated on, and how shallow some could be. As I aged, I became more isolated and heavily antisocial. I would pretend and wear a mask to interact with people, acting in accordance with their desires for the benefit of both of us, but I could never take it any further. All the pretending eventually bored me once I felt I had them. Given that I never chose to exploit them, I could not cross that line. I cannot break people that way. Late middle school and high school rolled around, and I stopped wearing the mask. I stopped pretending, but I saw others doing what I had done, except they crossed that line. It had become a game. I thought maybe this behavior was just due to my environment or the people around me. I witnessed guys use others, cross the line, and discard them. I hated that trend as it became increasingly prevalent. Sex was glorified everywhere, with teenage curiosity leading to a cycle of kissing and telling. I despised the aftermath of it all. The views on sex among male circles transformed it into a game, a currency for the ego, and an act of selfish indulgence, a mere activity rather than an experience. The connection was lost, and a constant echo of that moment where I was just a body being used haunted me. I stepped back and ended up graduating near the end of my sophomore year. I dabbled in college here and there but did not invest much effort as I did not know what I wanted to do. I worked intermittently but stopped functioning socially altogether. I ceased trying to make male friends as 70% of their conversations revolved around sex while the other 30% consisted of hobbies, work, or school. I considered them not worth my time. As for females, I could not form friendships there either. More often than not, I found myself playing the role of a therapist, helping them deal with their own issues. I would help them navigate their pain, presenting their circumstances in a new light, guiding them past obsession or merely physical relationships. However, after all that fixing, I was left behind, either because I became associated with their past pain or because I rarely found anyone who was truly invested in the process. Amidst all of this, I began yearning for my own connection, for someone who would be devoted to me for simply being myself. But I realized I had sabotaged my chances. I have not led a normal life, so I struggle to relate to most people. I have not traveled, and I cannot engage in conversations about various types of coffee or share general small talk typically associated with a normal, if not good, upbringing. I do not understand that language. I only know pain, how to identify it, how to use it as a driving force to keep myself here on this earth, and how to be comfortable with it. I missed the stage of building connections in high school and college. Now everything feels like a mere transaction: what I offer, stability, fun, and whatever else someone seeks. That feels fair, but I am deeply broken and lost. I cannot suppress what makes me who I am. Despite that aching desire to be connected, one I wish I did not have, the need to not feel alone, I cannot take anyone under my wing if I have no clear idea of what I want to do with my life. While I sometimes wish for a fairy tale ending, it is clear to me that we are all, to some extent, lost. No one is doing the saving if we all wait to be saved, even with the thoughts I have shared above. While I begrudgingly drown in envy and live vicariously through others, I continue to move forward. Honestly, I would have taken my own life long ago if it were not for my siblings, whom I raised and who look up to their big brother. They are all just like me. My two brothers mirror me in ways that make it impossible for me to leave them. I move heavily and maintain an intense demeanor, or so I am told. My little brother seems to be mirroring my style, I guess. Fortunately, my two brothers have been exempt from that pain. Thank goodness for that. My sisters and I carry the same pain, and my determination to move forward encourages them to do the same. My parents and family mean too much to me for me to consider just giving up. I cannot subject them to that pain. So I push forward and bury the pain, even as I grow to hate everything and desire almost nothing. I needed to get this off my chest. I am currently in the army, wanting it to be my purpose to commit myself wholly to something beyond me. Unfortunately, it just does not feel worthy of that. I have deluded dreams that still linger, cycling and unraveling in the shadows. I needed to express this, and yes, it is messy. Not as organized as I initially intended it to be, but it is what it is. If you made it through all of this, thank you for taking the time to listen. Story 3. After 2 years with my ex, a twice-divorced single mom, I realized I was a financial crutch, paying for everything while she gaslit me about my worth. You need to earn more to support a family, she'd say as I lost myself. Should I fall for her charm again or face the brutal truth? I have recently ended my relationship with my girlfriend, and it has been about a month since the breakup. I would appreciate some external perspective on how I should evaluate the relationship retrospectively. I have posted about this before. I am a 34-year-old male doctor earning $150,000 per year. I am currently single and own a large house. Initially, I could not drive at the beginning of the relationship, but I learned how to. I now own a car worth $100,000. I do not go out frequently, and I consider myself very loyal and sensible. My background is working class, but my family is very supportive with my parents still together. I have a large, loving family that continues to grow. My ex-girlfriend is a twice-divorced single mother with 2 children. She earned between $35,000 and $50,000 per year. Initially, she drove a very modest small car but upgraded to a Tesla during our relationship, likely costing around $30,000, and she is from Ukraine. Her parents are divorced, she rarely sees her father, and her brother is a drug addict living in another country. She has a wide network of friends who enter and exit her life, along with a few very stable and wealthy friends who sometimes treat her to vacations. We started dating 2 years ago. The chemistry was incredible both in conversation and sexually. We enjoyed activities together and felt like soul mates, especially when cooking. Throughout the entire relationship, I paid for everything. I spent over $40,000, which covered all dinners, drinks, activities, day trips, and 2 vacations abroad, each costing between $3,000 and $4,000. I also occasionally assisted her with car repairs. For her birthdays, I consistently spent 2 to 4 times the amount she spent on me. I covered all activities we did with her and her children, like trips to amusement parks and fireworks displays, and I organized each of these outings. At times, she genuinely felt like a soulmate. The first year of our relationship was fairly magical in my eyes. Although the costs were significant and challenging, I could not drive at the time, so she would travel 55 minutes to visit me, staying for 2 to 3 days, during which I paid for everything, including food, restaurants, spas, and gym passes. Unfortunately, in the last year of our relationship, everything deteriorated. I had to be more cautious with my finances for a few months, as my earnings were temporarily reduced by 80%. This shift in my financial situation made me generally more cautious, something she did not seem to appreciate or recognize. Despite this challenge, I continued to pay for everything, including 2 holidays. During our first holiday together, she contributed nothing financially, even when I asked her to buy at least an occasional drink or cab ride to make things feel more balanced. At that time, she claimed she could not afford it, but a few months later, she bought a new Tesla and continued to have her hair and nails done regularly. Our breakup was largely due to her feelings that 1. I did not take responsibility. 2. She became very jealous when I passed my driving test in the last 6 months of our relationship. 3. I was not present enough in her life. 4. She stopped driving to see me. She was also very demanding. She insisted that I should purchase her a 500 coffee machine for my house, claiming it was the least I could do to make her feel comfortable. However, I always tried to ensure she was comfortable and ultimately did buy the coffee machine. I frequently treated her to expensive foods like lobster, smoked salmon, oysters, and crab steak, which are not items I typically buy or that my friends consume regularly. She eventually began seeing a therapist, who informed her that she exhibited abusive behavior in the relationship and that she was a narcissist. When she shared this with me, she acknowledged that I might have been causing her pain but concluded that if she broke up with me, it would not help her, showing disregard for my feelings. I began to physically and mentally neglect myself, going from a doctor with a six-pack who dressed well to someone who appeared like an old, depressed father. My family grew increasingly concerned as I began wearing trainers, mismatched socks, a Christmas sweater, and whatever chinos I could scrounge. I stopped exercising. Financially, I ceased buying or eating nice food from Monday to Wednesday because I knew she would come over on Wednesday or Thursday and stay until Saturday. I thought it was wiser to save my money for when she was present. There were many beautiful moments we shared, such as at the beach or water park and in our intimate moments. However, I cannot help but reflect that, in hindsight, I should not feel warmly regretful about it. Instead, I should acknowledge it as it was financial abuse and affection based on materialistic desire. Should I view it differently? I am quite cautious about my ex-girlfriend's therapist likely being correct. I may have been abused by a narcissist. It was foolish of me not to realize it during the relationship. I am still utterly shocked that she openly admitted to being the abuser and claimed to exhibit narcissistic traits while I embraced and consoled her instead of focusing on my own well-being. There were numerous signs of her demeaning behavior. As a fully qualified, high-earning doctor, she told me, 1. I needed to earn more money to support a family and should feel pressured to do so. 2. Although her children adored how I interacted with them, she belittled it by saying, "They must see you as a friend. I am great with children because I have many younger cousins." 3. She would criticize my car, saying it felt uncomfortable I drive a Mercedes S-Class. She displayed genuine jealousy toward it, which became evident when she called me last week as I was trying to return her belongings and said, "You said you'd never drive your beautiful car into the city," a sentiment I would never express. 4. She insisted that her happiness should be my priority, implying that I should buy her things. 5. She frequently compared me to her ex or other individuals with partners who paid for even more. 6. She belittled me for not being able to drive, but after I obtained my license, she pressured me to drive to places even when I was still gaining confidence. Within a month, I became confident and was driving everywhere. 7. Anytime I achieved something, she compared it to something greater. For example, when I spent $3,000 on a holiday in Greece, she would remark how she would prefer to be in France. 8. Nothing in my house was sufficient for her. I own a large house valued at nearly $800,000, while she has a modest home valued around $250,000. My dining table is large and overlooks a pleasant view, perfect for working, yet she would criticize it, saying it wasn't nice enough and lacked adequate workspace. Despite my house being 4 times the size of hers, with ample workspaces and desks larger than most dining tables, she was never satisfied or happy. 9. She lied, claiming I only saw her children every 6 months. This was untrue. I thoughtfully bought them birthday and Christmas gifts, treated the other child on their sibling's birthday to ensure they felt included, allowed them to stay at my house, hosted barbecues, engaged in water fights, bought them small gifts, and spent time playing with them during family gatherings instead of socializing with the adults. I even did homework with them, FaceTimed them, and played Roblox with them, which was exceptionally tedious. Despite all of this, I received the remark, "They see you as a friend but not an adult." Throughout the relationship, she frequently criticized me, while I never once critiqued her or demanded anything from her. The major reality check for me came when she booked a vacation with her friend without me and without consulting or informing me. When I expressed that I felt it was unfair since she could have contributed something towards our planned third holiday, she replied that she arranged the trip because she mentioned it and I did not respond. She also claimed my reaction was wrong. I should have said, "I am happy for you, here is some spending money, and next month let me plan a holiday for both of us." This coincided with my grandfather becoming ill. The week after she returned from her vacation with her friend, she attended bachata dancing in my city. She texted me to inform me she was in town but did not visit my house. At that time, I was with my grandfather, who was in his final hours. He passed away at 1:30 a.m. She texted me to express annoyance that I did not pay for a taxi to take her from the city to my house, stating that was the only way she would visit me under those circumstances. When I informed her via text that my grandfather had died, she replied, "I am sorry for your loss and I send my condolences to your family." There was no phone call, no inquiry about my feelings, and no effort to comfort me. It was a cold message akin to what a colleague might send. The next day, she did not reach out to me. I had to call her in an attempt to resolve the situation, but it became clear to me that she was not there for me as I would have been for her in similar circumstances. After the breakup, I spoke to her, and she stated that she needed to accept me for who I am, which is someone who does not want to take responsibility. And she refused to meet with me in person, ending our 2-year relationship over the phone. I found this very demeaning considering my financial commitment and my willingness to take on the responsibilities associated with her having 2 children. I will be candid. I genuinely loved her, and I have limited relationship experience, which contributed to my deep affection for her. However, everyone around me is telling me she was a narcissist and a user, and I need to view her through a realistic lens rather than through my misguided emotions. I would appreciate any thoughts and reality checks you may have. I know my family is concerned that I might eventually go back to her or leave the door open for her return. My father revealed that he discovered a bag of baby toys I bought for her children last Christmas. He went home and wept, feeling that I was squandering my life by dating a single mother and taking on her 2 children when I was the pride of our family and quite successful. He shared that it broke him and caused him significant distress for months, but he refrained from telling me because he knew I was very loyal and devoted to her. Do I need to firmly close this chapter and only contemplate it with brutal realism, devoid of affection? Should I simply discard her belongings if she refuses to collect them? I have trusted my heart for the past 2 years, but I no longer believe I can continue doing so. My feelings have led me astray, and even as I write this, I realize how foolish I've been. Should I reflect on the relationship and her character for what they truly are? If so, how would you characterize her? This is an entirely accurate representation of the relationship, and I have presented complete facts. The reason I mention money and financial figures is that they were significant, and the activities I undertook with the children were equally noteworthy. Story 4. I fell for a soldier stationed overseas who flew to see me after 7 months of heartfelt gaming nights and deep conversations. "I'm here because of you," he said, but after a silly argument he left with, "Stop bothering me," and blocked me everywhere. How did it all unravel so fast? I do not even know where to begin or what I want from posting this. This will be extremely long, and I am already very sorry, but no one who does not want to has to read it. I am overwhelmed by heartbreak and overthinking. I feel confused and abandoned. For the past 7 months, I have been talking to someone who was stationed overseas. I started to like him more and more because we had so much fun gaming together. He was witty and kind. Whenever we spoke on the phone, which was not often, it would last for hours. Although he took a long time to respond to texts, and my overthinking sometimes made me doubt whether I was hoping for more than this could ever be, he eventually booked tickets to come see me. It was not an easy decision. It was stressful and the tickets were expensive. He was in the process of moving to the base at which he would be stationed next, yet he still came. He brought me snacks from the countries he had visited while deployed. I never expected him to think of getting me something from his travels. Once he arrived, things were a bit awkward. Clearly, we came from different cultures, and it was our first time meeting in real life, which made me very nervous. We had planned for 10 days together, or at least we should have. Toward the end, things improved. We laughed, gamed together, explored the city, and went to various places. We flirted over the months, making jokes about marriage and children. However, he seemed reserved. At one point, while joking about getting married and having children, he was so reserved that I did not understand if he was just teasing me. I expressed that whenever I tried to make a move, he seemed to push me right back into the friend zone. He responded by saying that I put myself in the friend zone by being the way I am. I thought he was joking, but he assured me he was serious. When I asked why he had not mentioned this earlier while flirting and joking with me, he said he did not want things to become awkward since he was going to be with me for the rest of his trip. That caught me off guard and genuinely hurt me. We still went out for drinks, but it felt awkward, and I could not bear the overthinking, so I eventually got drunk. When we returned home, we had a small argument about earlier and I cried. I felt like a complete fool and assumed he was only here for a vacation, not because of me, which he claimed was not true. He mentioned he would look for a hotel in the morning. I did not want him to leave. He stayed and we made up. So far, so good. I tried my best to be a good host and avoid making things awkward, though I felt embarrassed about crying the night before. During breakfast, we talked about the previous night. He assured me that he was there because of me and referred to it as dating. However, he noted that every relationship starts with friendship and evolves into dating, and he wanted to see where this would lead. He was interested and genuinely liked me. I decided to stop being overly concerned about my overthinking. The following days were significantly better. We had a lot of fun and even created an inside joke. We laughed frequently. I fell for him, his smile, his voice, his dimples, and the way he spoke. He is smart and funny. I felt that he liked me as well, but a small voice in my head suggested he would block me once he returned home and moved to his next base. He insisted he would not do that and said he would miss me. We even discussed him coming back to see me again. He had 2 phone numbers, one from where he was deployed last and another from his home country. As the date for his relocation approached, I began asking about his home phone number because I wondered how we would stay in touch. He obviously would not keep a phone number from a country where he was no longer living. Eventually, he gave it to me before he arrived. One night at a bar, we discussed his phone number, but I do not remember who brought it up. He said he only gave me his home number because I demanded it. I felt foolish. I clarified that I did not demand it and he did not have to give it to me if he did not want to. I offered to delete it if he wished, and I did so when he told me to. He then claimed he was just joking and testing to see if I was bluffing. He mentioned that he did not even use it and planned to get a new one at his next base anyway. I felt uneasy. The tiny voice telling me he would block me and cut off contact once he returned home grew louder. I tried to ignore it. We spent the last few days having a lot of fun, but then we had an argument one night. I questioned him about why he would lie about not having friends when he must know that was not true and why he would mislead me about not talking to other girls. While I did not mind, I did not appreciate being lied to and could not understand the need for the deception. He got nervous, insisting that was not true, then suddenly contradicted himself, claiming he did have friends but did not even remember the name of one girl, whom he found annoying because she still sent memes despite his lack of response. I did not believe any of it. I felt disappointed and sad, thinking all the overthinking about him only being there for a trip and not caring about me was indeed true. He began looking for an Airbnb. I did not try to persuade him to stay because I felt he was not there for me and hoped he would suggest something on his own without me having to initiate. I wanted to see if he genuinely wanted this. I told him that I was not kicking him out and he was welcome to stay, but I did not want to have to persuade him. He did not say anything in response. He eventually found a place to stay but decided to spend the night at my place since he could not check in until the following day at noon. I did not want him to leave. I offered that he could stay with me and enjoy the last 2 days as he wished. I felt anxious and hurt, replaying everything he had said and reflecting on the past 7 months of our conversations. I felt foolish, fully aware that I was headed for heartbreak at this point. The following morning, we had hardly slept. I made him breakfast and we had coffee, but neither of us said anything. Even when I tried to engage him, it seemed pointless. He was ignoring me while waiting to leave for his Airbnb. I asked why he was ignoring me and being rude when I was doing nothing of the sort to him. I told him to go ahead and block me now instead of later, as I knew he would do it anyway. I handed him the snacks he had brought me because I no longer wanted them, as I was incredibly angry and hurt. I was so sad and anxious. I did not mean it and I regret that so much. I do not typically say or do things like that regardless of how I am feeling. But at that moment my emotions regrettably took control. His response was to tell me to stop bothering him. He got up and left, thanking me on his way out. When I asked if he was seriously leaving just like that, he replied with a curt "yep" and walked out without even looking at me. I closed the door and had to sit down to process what had just happened, followed immediately by tears. Since then, he has blocked me everywhere except on WhatsApp and his home phone number. I do not know why. Perhaps he only deleted the app, which is why his account is still there and I am not blocked on it. Maybe he changed phone numbers, explaining why I am still able to reach him on the one from his home country. I do not know. I attempted to call and text him because I was concerned about him in a foreign country by himself, but never received a response. Unsurprisingly, I feel cast aside, manipulated, and foolish. I am hurting from this and I wish I could turn back time. I keep asking myself why I brought anything up in the first place. I did not want to argue at all. I tried to remain calm, explaining that I was not trying to pick a fight. I merely wanted to express that I did not appreciate being lied to, especially given all the mixed signals he had been sending me, which made me feel like just a vacation host and tour guide. I should have just stopped talking. But then why would he spend so much on tickets and endure more than 10 hours of travel just to see me? Why would he think of me while traveling and bring me something from his experiences? Why was he being so kind? Why did he open up about his past and family life? Did he ever like me? Did he ever genuinely care? I do not even know why I am writing this. I feel lost and confused. It hurts. It feels as though I imagined all of it. None of it seemed real. It was all in my head. I am such a fool. I keep rewatching his videos of him playing guitar and the vlogs he made for me during his travels, although I now feel uncertain that he made them for me. I had asked him to create vlogs for me because I loved listening to him. I continue to look at his pictures. I miss him so much. It will take such a long time to get over this, and it makes me reluctant to meet anyone else again. I feel so crazy and like a complete fool. I have not felt this way in years. He was the first person I fell for after being single for 3 years. I have been trying to keep myself occupied. I return to reading, I go to the gym more often than before, and I even purchased a guitar and started practicing. Still, I cannot get him out of my mind. I do not expect anyone to read all of this, but it does feel good to get it off my chest, as I do not want to talk to anyone about it. Summary, I spoke to someone for 7 months who was deployed overseas. He flew out to see me. We started off a bit rocky but eventually improved. We had a lot of fun and even created an inside joke. I fell for him. It ended with an argument 3 days before he was set to leave. He left early and blocked me everywhere. Now I am overwhelmed by heartbreak.